Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is day 124, Thursday, July the 6th, 2017. Thank you for tuning in. Okay, there's not a whole lot going on today as far as the surveillance and the specific things that we cover a lot on TowerGate, but there are a couple other things going on that we're going to talk about today. And the first two are kind of somewhat humorous, and then we'll get to something more serious that I just want to do kind of a brief overview on regarding the North Korea situation. Okay, let's get to the first thing. As most of you know, the most popular thing going on today around the internet is this deal where CNN has apparently stepped in it again. They are now engaged in some blackmail activity against the individual who was apparently the creator of the meme that Donald Trump retweeted, with himself as the wrestler throwing the person to the ground with the CNN logo over the face. Well, it appears that CNN has tracked this individual down and forced him to make an apology statement, and stating, even right there on their own CNN broadcast with the words right there on the screen, that if he ever posts anything that they don't like again about CNN, or anything that they determine is sexist, racist, homophobic, or whatever, anti-Semitic, whatever, that they will reveal his name. Now, I had 2 law classes in college. We actually did get into quite a discussion for a couple days about slander and libel. I know a little bit about it. I don't claim to be an attorney, and I don't claim to be 100% accurate on what I'm about to tell you. But if I can reflect back many years to those classes and try to recall what we learned about libel and slander lawsuits, I will try to go through this and give you my opinion on what I think. So CNN decides that they're going to get this person's identity. They contact a mod at Time Warner, who is their parent company. Time Warner owns CNN. And they spoke with a mod there and said, hey, we want this person's identity. Now, they used their resources to get this person's identity. And they gave that identity to CNN, who then used that information to contact this person, first by email, then by phone, and to apparently bully him. One of the producers from CNN basically threatened him and said, hey, if you don't make an official apology statement that we can play on CNN, we're going to disclose to the public your name, address, phone number, whatever. We're going to make your information public in order to cause you embarrassment or some sort of harm. Now, this is called defamation. This is something you can sue someone for. Now, I'm not so sure that Time Warner didn't violate the law by giving, or at least some FCC regulation, by giving this producer at CNN, this individual, private citizen's information. I think that information is protected. If you saw a comment on Twitter or Facebook or YouTube that you didn't like, do you think that you could pick up the phone and call Time Warner and say, yeah, there's a person by the username of this. I would like to know that person's real name, phone number, and address. Do you think that CNN, or do you think Time Warner would reveal to you that person's, based on their usernames, information, their real private information? No, they would not. Why? Because they would be in legal jeopardy. So why should they be able to give it to a producer at CNN? Yes, they own CNN, but this is still a private individual. And you have certain rights as a private individual. You know, you have to understand the difference between a public person and a private person. A public person is a politician. A public person could be anyone who works for the government, law enforcement, someone like that. You are a public person if you are engaged in any activity which your name appears in the public record. For instance, you committed a crime, you've been in a car accident. Now, of course, it's different if you're under 18 or over 18. If you're under 18, a lot of times minors' names will be protected, even in things like car accidents and things like that. But this does not apply to this individual. He did not commit any crime. Did not commit any crime, yet the producer of CNN calls him on the phone and essentially blackmails him. He says, either you do this or we're going to do this. That's blackmail. Okay, plain and simple. Now, that can certainly be investigated by the state where CNN is licensed by some attorney, prosecutor, whatever, and they might want to bring some charges against CNN for blackmail. Now, if this individual that they're dealing with turns out to be a minor, they have got really, really big problems. So, there's also the aspect of it of whether or not Time Warner violated any laws or any FCC regulations by revealing to this CNN producer this private citizen's information. Now, many people on social media sites use aliases. In other words, they don't use the real name. They use a user name for the very purpose of protecting their personal privacy, their private identity, which is perfectly fine. Lots of people do it on social media websites. That's what most people do. Not many people use their real name. You are protected. You're a private citizen. That's why people use these types of usernames. So CNN threatening to reveal this individual's real name, of course, by the very fact that he uses a username, tells you that he wishes to remain private. He's using an alias, a username. Therefore, he has got a solid foundation that he did not wish for his name to be made public, and he's a private citizen, and he has that right. For CNN to actually threaten him and say, well, if you don't apologize, we're going to reveal your name, I think even if this is not a criminal violation, he certainly has very, very strong grounds for a civil lawsuit for defamation. And I am sure right now there are many attorneys attempting to contact this individual and let him know that they would love to represent him in a lawsuit against Time Warner and CNN, in which case Time Warner and CNN would settle out of court for millions and millions of dollars. This person, I don't know who it is, but whoever they are, they may not realize it, but something tells me in the next 24 hours they will realize that this individual has basically just hit the lottery. He has now hit the lottery. He's going to be a very, very rich person because he's probably going to be contacted by an attorney who's going to let him know that he is a solid case for defamation or at least blackmail. They're threatening. So they haven't revealed his name yet, but if they did, that would be a solid grounds for a defamation suit, which would result in millions of dollars in damages for the plaintiff. Now, they haven't revealed his name yet, but they have threatened to reveal his name if he didn't do what they wanted him to do. That is blackmail. That is also an injury. It is also something that you could get an attorney and sue for. And that's exactly what he should do. It's exactly what he should do. And I'm sure he's being advised of that right now. What he should do is come up with a couple more good memes about CNN and put them up. And he should go back to doing whatever he does and saying whatever he says. And call CNN's bluff. My guess is that producer has already been contacted by someone in their legal department and told to shut the hell up and not to do any more of that sort of thing, because they probably already expect there will be a lawsuit coming their way, and there should be. So CNN's awfully, awfully lucky, and I don't know if they would have revealed his name. It may have just been a threat to get him to cooperate and apologize. But had they revealed his name publicly as a private citizen, especially if he's a minor, slam dunk. CNN would have been sued for millions, as well as Time Warner. But we'll wait and see what shakes out on this story and see where it goes. I don't think it's finished. So that's CNN stepping in it again. These people just, it's unbelievable. Okay, here's the next story. You'll like this one. Okay, if you live in California, it's not only okay that they will marry 2 men or 2 women, which is fantastic. I guess 2 men, 2 women, whatever, whatever. If that's what you want to do, go for it. Not my cup of tea, but, some people are into that sort of thing. So in California, yeah, no problem. They'll marry 2 men, they'll marry 2 women. But what do you think? In the state of California, they have just married, and of course will now marry, 3 individuals of the same sex. Yes, that's right. 3 men were just married in California. Exactly how that works, I don't know. I'm not really down with the whole, the whole homosexual community, the relationships, and how all that works. But it just seems like there's like a third wheel there. It's like, when you go out with some friends, and it's like you're with a friend, he's with his girlfriend, and you're not with your girlfriend. You're kind of like, the odd wheel. Or you got with your friend, one of your friends, and he's with his girlfriend. You're with him. You don't have a girlfriend there. You're kind of like the odd wheel. So it just, as a heterosexual, that's how I always felt in those situations. You're kind of like, you feel like you're out of place. But how it works in a homosexual relationship when you are, the third person. I'm not really sure how that works, but the fact is just the fact that they'll marry not just two people of the same sex, but they'll marry three people of the same sex. But there's one thing that positive that you can take away from this. The next time that you're having a really bad day, just one of them days where just everything seems to be going wrong, just remember that no matter how bad your day is, your day will never be nearly as bad as the third man in that relationship who's been deemed or targeted as the pivot man. You would not want to be the pivot man in that relationship. Could be quite painful. I'm sorry to bring up those types of images in your mind, but it's just the first thing that popped into my mind. And so I'm awfully glad that I'm not in a three-way homosexual relationship and that I've been determined or deemed to be the pivot man. You don't want to be the pivot man. So I'll let it go at that, and I'll let your imaginations run wild. Have some fun with that one. Okay. Let's get to something serious now. As you know, North Korea has just fired another two-stage ballistic missile, which apparently has enough range to reach Alaska. And so we're saying all options are on the table. And I did a whole video on North Korea about 3-4 months ago. You can go back and watch that video. I lay out all the details and go through the entire thing. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to give you just my brief sort of explanation of it again. And so people say, why is Kim Jong-un doing this? What's he trying to prove or whatever? Well, the thing that you got to remember is that Kim Jong-un knows that we are not going to do nothing. There's very little we can do. The only thing we can do is put pressure on China. And, you can only do so much. You can put pressure on China. And you do various things to tweak China to try to motivate them to put more pressure on North Korea. Because without China, North Korea really would have a very, very difficult time. They rely heavily on China for food, fuel, money, and other things, defense and other things like that. So, but China gets something in return from that relationship. They get a buffer zone between them and the West, and they also get a lot of natural resources out of China. Now, the military option, which is what they mean when they say, well, all options are on the table. Well, let me tell you what, those options are not on the table. The military option is really not on the table. Let me tell you why. Number one, the three countries that border North Korea are Russia, China, and South Korea. None of those three support a military operation. If none of those three support a military operation, it ain't going to happen. Japan, which does not border North Korea, but is a sworn enemy of North Korea, and would certainly be targeted by North Korea if a war were to break out, they also do not support military action. So there's no support whatsoever from the other players involved who you would really have to have their support to do a military operation. We wouldn't do it without at least China being somewhat on board, South Korea being totally on board, and Japan being pretty much on board. We wouldn't do it against the wishes of these other countries. It'd be a political disaster. It'd be a military disaster as well, which is the other reason why we would never do it. Now, as far as the military options, well, here's pretty much your options. You could either just out of nowhere launch a full-scale military operation in North Korea. That would be a complete disaster. You could, and we won't do it, you could do a limited military strike where you just hit his nuclear facilities, but I don't think we'll even do that. I'd be very surprised if we even did that. You could try to entice North Korea to strike at you first, so you could at least say, hey, they started it and we finished it, and all you'd have to do is bring your aircraft carrier group within about 5 miles of their territorial waters and let them go around in circles for a few days until Kim Jong-un freaks out and launches some missiles at you. Then you could retaliate and go for a full-scale war. But here's why none of those things will happen. Okay. As far as I know, we do not have a weapon that can destroy the North Korean missile, offensive missiles, offensive weapons that they have. We do not have a weapon, as far as I know, that can destroy their capabilities within a matter of minutes, which is what you'd have to do. You'd have about 15 minutes. You'd have to destroy everything they got. And let me tell you why. Because even if they don't have a nuke, they don't need a nuke. They have got somewhere in the neighborhood of 12,000 to 15,000, I've heard, as high as 15,000 missiles, rockets. These rockets are targeted. We believe there's somewhere in the neighborhood of 6,000 to 7,000 rockets specifically targeted at Seoul. Seoul, of course, is a population. It's a very densely populated city. Has about 10 million people. If you were to attack North Korea, you can imagine that within a matter of minutes, those missiles would be fired into Seoul. Within a couple hours, you'd have thousands, tens of thousands killed. Within a matter of days, you'd have more than that. Within 2 or 3 weeks, whatever it would take you to take out all of North Korea's missile capabilities or offensive capabilities that they could point at Japan or against South Korea. Before you could get all their weapons taken care of, they would have easily killed possibly as many as 1 million people in Seoul. 1 million people would be killed. They also have quite a stockpile of chemical weapons. And they do have a couple of atomic bombs, which if they could get them loaded into a plane and fly them over Seoul and drop a couple atomic bombs on Seoul, they could kill many millions of people. You see, we do not have a military weapon that can take out the the North Korean missiles and rockets fast enough. We could do the biggest, baddest military operation we could put together, 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week operation. It would take anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks to completely destroy North Korea's capabilities to attack Seoul or China or Japan. So that's why the military option is not an option, because we do not have the ability to take out the North Korea's offensive missile capability fast enough to keep them from killing as many as 1 million, if not more, people in Seoul, South Korea. Not to mention how many they would kill in Japan. Remember, these are ballistic missiles. They have pretty good explosion capabilities. When those missiles hit, they're going to kill dozens or hundreds of people. And they've got 12,000 to 15,000 missiles. 6,000 to 7,000 are targeted right at Seoul. Those missiles would probably be launched within 4, 6, maybe 8 hours. Those missiles will be launched into Seoul, South Korea. You'd have hundreds of thousands of people killed. If they had chemical weapons, warheads on them, you'd be talking about even more. You'd be talking about a complete calamity. And so this is why we will not use the military option against North Korea, because we cannot get to their offensive missile capabilities quickly enough to keep them from killing in the upwards of 1 million people in Seoul and a lot of people in Japan as well. They might even launch into China. We really don't know what Kim Jong would do, but we do know he would respond. We do know that. He definitely would not sit back and take it, and that has a lot to do with North Korea's history. North Korea, prior to World War II, was under brutal occupation by the Japanese, and prior to that, they were under brutal occupation by the Chinese. Japan used North Korea as slaves, and they used their women as sex slaves. They executed many. They beat them. They starved them. They treated them like animals, like dogs. So the reason why Seoul and why, the reason why North Korea and the reason why the Kims are so loved by their people is because since the Kims came to power, they no longer fell into brutal slavery by one of their more powerful neighbors, like China and Japan. So this is one reason why the Kims are loved, because at least they've been pretty brutal themselves, but at least ways the brutality is coming from their own guy and not from their brutal neighbors. But yeah, their treatment by the Japanese in between World War I and World War II, in that period, in those 40 years or so, was just absolutely horrible, absolutely horrible. But anyway, so the military option that they keep threatening with, the reason Kim Jong-un is not worried about that is because he knows they're not going to do it. He knows that China doesn't support it, Russia doesn't support it, South Korea doesn't support it, Japan doesn't support it. None of them support the military option. And we all know that, as far as we know, we do not have a weapon that can take out Kim Jong-un's missile capabilities in a matter of 15 or 20 minutes, which is what you would have to do. Because if you leave him more than 15 or 20 minutes, and I think it would take 2 to 4 weeks to take down North Korea even if we launched everything we had 24/7, minus nuclear. I don't think we would use nukes on him. But using other big weapons. We have Moabs and bunker busters and things like that, and conventional military hardware, jets, smart bombs, various other things. It would still take us 2 to 4 weeks to take Kim Jong-un's military out, by which time he would have killed in the upwards of 1 million or more people in Seoul, and probably quite a few people in Japan and maybe China. So, the military option is not really on the table. Kim Jong-un understands this very, very well. Understands it very well. That's why he continues to do what he's doing. He continues to develop his program. He continues to be flamboyant. He continues to thumb his nose at us because he knows what I just told you, that the military option that we always say is on the table is not on the table. The only way we use military option against Kim Jong-un is if he launches on us first. He would actually have to launch on us or one of our allies, at which point if he launched on one of our allies, Japan or South Korea, they would retaliate. If he launched on China themselves would retaliate. So the only real tools that we have, we've already got sanctions on him. We can't put any more sanctions on him. The only people who can really hurt him with sanctions anyway is China, and China is only willing to go so far. Another reason that, and the main reason, and at least a big part of the reason why China and South Korea do not want to go along with the military option or regime change type situation is because it creates a huge, huge problem. You have in North Korea about 25.6 million people, 25.5 million people. These are people who have been completely dependent on the government for their whole lives. Just imagine if tomorrow Kim Jong-un was gone, and then you had this whole country of 25 plus million people completely incapable of feeding themselves or of doing anything. Now, we saw from the collapse of the Soviet Union that it took the Russian people, after all those years of being part of the communist Soviet Union, it took them about 20 years to even grasp the basic concepts of market capitalism. And they weren't shut off from the world nearly the way that the people in North Korea are. They weren't mind-controlled and brainwashed near to the degree that the people in North Korea are. Remember, the people in North Korea live in a different reality. They don't even know what the real world is like. Imagine just the shock if they were to be exposed to the real world. Just like that. One day they've got Kim Jong-un, the next day they're exposed to the real world. They wouldn't hardly be able to handle. Remember, to them, the Kims are gods. These people would be psychologically wrecked beyond belief. They also are incapable of taking care of themselves. They have no ability to do so. So what you would have if you're China or South Korea is you would have right on your border 25 million refugees, many of whom will hate you. They would have to be fed and cared for and taken care of. You would also have a massive power vacuum. Who knows what would come in the aftermath. So this is another reason why China and China and South Korea are opposed to a major regime change operation in North Korea, is because of the aftermath. What do you do after Kim Jong-un is gone? What do you do with 25 million people who have no ability whatsoever to even consider taking care of themselves? They don't know what that's like. They only know that Kim gives them everything. He feeds them, he clothes them, he cares for them, he thinks for them, he protects them. Once that's all taken away, these people will be psychological basket cases. They would not even be able to comprehend or deal with the realities of the world that they don't even know exists. They don't even know that we went to the moon. They don't know anything. They are completely brainwashed, mind-controlled people. And they would fight vigorously. They would fight to the last man. I mean, they believe what they've been told to believe. It would be a refugee crisis of biblical proportions. 25 million people streaming across the borders. God knows how many of them would be enemy combatants, how many of them would just be starving people. They wouldn't understand the reality of the world that they would be awakened to. I mean, it creates so many problems and so many levels and so many different dimensions that South Korea and China, they're just like, oh man, we don't even want to go there, okay? what's best for us is just to deal with Kim Jong-un, put up with the silliness. He's not, people say, okay, he's crazy, he's unhinged. I don't really think so. I don't think he could lead that regime if he was, totally crazy. I think he's pretends to be crazy. I think he plays the crazy card, but he's not really crazy. He knows what he's doing. He's not probably a genius, but he's not an idiot either. So I don't really think Kim Jong-un is crazy. In other words, he's of sound mind. He knows exactly what he's doing, and he knows that we're not going to hit him. Now, what is the only real option that you have in North Korea that has any chance of at all? And even this is really, really hard to imagine it could happen. Well, the only thing you really have is a coup, or to murder Kim. Now, maybe you could we tried this with Castro for 30 years. We tried to poison him. We tried to poison his food. We tried to, make his hair fall out. We tried to inject him with cancer. We tried all these things for 30 years. We finally just threw up our hands and gave up. Castro had someone who would taste all of his food before he would eat it, drink anything he was supposed to drink before he drank it. He did not allow anyone to give him injections or shots. His doctor was, of course, one of his best friends. And the Kims have set up a very similar situation in North Korea. Very, very difficult. It'd be very, very difficult to poison Kim Jong-un. I imagine he has a food tester, someone who tests everything before he puts it in his mouth. I imagine he's very careful about getting any types of vaccinations or taking any type of medicine. He probably has a guy, that literally before he takes any medicine, they probably has a guy he gives it to. Is okay, let me give it to this guy and see how he does. So this is how paranoid the Kims are. And it's not, this is 3 generations of Kims. And they've experienced all this stuff before. I'm pretty sure that they have insulated themselves well enough to where it would be very, very difficult to try to kill Kim with some sort of poison, or, you could try a drone strike, but then you got to wonder, even if you drone strike him, hit him at his house and blow him up and kill him in his inner circle, you still got to wonder how his generals are going to respond. I mean, they'll probably respond the way he would. He's probably already given that order. He's probably already said, if anything ever happens to me, this is what you do. So he probably already has a plan for that. So it's going to be very, very difficult. And even trying to organize a coup, China is the only people who could do that. The Chinese would have to be able to get close enough to some people very high up around Kim Jong-un. He would have to be able to get them confident enough to feel they could pull it off and get away with it. But who would you talk to? I mean, even if you get one of these high-ranking military people and you talk to them and say, yeah, we want to take out Kim. Hey, you can be the new leader of the country as long as you cooperate and get along with everybody. Give up the nuclear weapons and give up the chemical weapons and all that kind of stuff. Hey, the world could be a much better place. North Korea can be a better place. Whatever. I mean, you could do anything you want, promise anything you want, $1 billion. I don't care. How does this individual orchestrate the coup? Can he go up to another person? Who does he know who he can trust? And I'm sure that Kim Jong-un, again, has very many layers of protection. He probably has every one of these guys bugged, wired for sound. He probably has spies watching every one of his high-ranking military people. He probably has spies watching the spies. He has spies watching the spies who are watching the spies. And he has spies watching the spies watching the spies who are watching the spies who are watching the man. I mean, this is literally the layers and layers that the Kims have put in place to make sure that they don't get taken out in a coup or poisoned or murdered or drone striked or whatever. So it's very difficult. The fact of the matter is, we're in a hell of a tough position with Kim Jong-un in North Korea. And that's why he continues to be so belligerent. He knows what I just told you. He knows that we really can't hit him unless he hits us first, and he's not stupid enough to do that. He's not going to launch on South Korea. He's not going to launch on China. He's not going to launch on Japan. And he surely isn't going to launch against the United States. He's going to continue to play the game he plays. And he's going to continue to get his nuclear program together because he knows that any attempt by us to hit him militarily, he's going to launch everything he's got, and there'll be over 1 million dead people in Seoul. There'll be probably tens of thousands of dead Japanese, and God knows what this guy, if this guy may even, launch into China if he thinks that China was part of the plan. So, he's in pretty good shape. Sanctions, he's already been sanctioned. We can't sanction him anymore. Maybe China could. We can do things to pressure China to force them to pressure him, but there's only so far they can go. And I'm not sure, really, you'd have to sit down and talk to the Chinese president. I mean, there's probably things we don't know. But anyway, the situation in China, situation in North Korea, don't worry. It ain't going to happen unless we have some super secret weapon which could take out North Korea in a matter of minutes. And then we'd have to deal with the fact that we just killed tens of millions of people in the process of taking out Kim Jong-un. And how would that go over? You see, there are no good options. And every option isn't on the table. The only option that is on the table is ain't a whole hell of a lot we can do. That's the option that's on the table. There ain't a whole hell of a lot we can do. That's just the reality of it. Okay? That's my opinion. Thank you for tuning in to TowerGate, day 124, July the 6th, 2017, Thursday. I look forward to being back with you again on Friday. You all have a good evening. See you. Bye.